Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from Cool Cleveland. We are here talking with Michael Salinger and Sara Holbrook. Thank you guys for taking a few moments and talking about what it's like to be creative artists in Cleveland or really anywhere in the world right now. Um, Sara, you have been in corporate communications, both
Yes.
for one of the world's largest law firms as well as a huge nonprofit. But you are writing poetry now for kids and adults, and you guys travel the world speaking at conferences. Michael, you started out in manufacturing and poetry slamming. You're writing books now, and I love the quote, helping students and teachers find their voice. Talk about what you guys were doing before COVID hit, because you had a wonderful itinerary and schedule, and you were traveling the world and teaching, and then boom, everything seemed to just shut down. Talk about that.
Go ahead, Sara.
It did. It all canceled. What we are is educational consultants. And so when we go to a school, it may be a school that's pre-K 12, we'll do assemblies for kids and then writing workshops in the classroom and professional development with the teachers. And our writing reflects that. Both of us have poetry books. I have one novel. We have textbooks for teachers. So that kind of work we could still work on, but just much like musicians, we make more from personal appearances than we do from our writing. So the rug was whipped out from underneath us on February 23rd.
So 20 years ago, I didn't even know that this profession existed. We're educational consultants, and what we've done, like Sara says, we've got different types of books. We write books that for kids, we write books for adults, and we write instructional books for teachers. And we found ourselves, we got invited to a conference in Bahrain about 15, 16 years ago, and that was the start of our international career. There are international schools all over the world. They're English-speaking schools, and there's really no one big district, but they're all interconnected because the people who work in them move about throughout them, and the people who send their children to them might be a executive for Disney that's going to different places. Anyway, so we got plugged into this international school system kind of idea. And for the last 15 years, we've been doing 60, 70% of our work overseas. We've been everywhere from Lagos, Nigeria to Kota Kinabalu, Borneo. We've been to Singapore a bunch, and that was our life. So we would travel, we do like 3 or 4 overseas gigs a year where we would put together a little tour, and we would be talking to students and talking to teachers, and that was our life. And then February 23rd, we're getting ready to get on the plane to go to the Middle East to speak at a conference and then visit schools. And that evening we got the call that the world was shut down, and every single one of our gigs for the rest of the year was canceled. So then what happened, Sara?
Well, it's interesting because you guys, you already had a project in the works, as it turns out. And so we are looking, as we talk to different people, about how they've reacted to COVID and the lockdown and how they've pivoted their own life. And you guys were kind of poised for that, right? You were really ready to start working on this other project.
Right. We'd been working on it off and on for about 5 years. And then last September, we started piloting this product in Los Fresnos, Texas, which is way down in the point. And 85% of their students are English language learners. And we worked with a team of teachers down there. It was piloted in 50 classrooms, and we thought we had a contract for this with a major publisher. We were in New York in February, thought we had it all nailed down, and COVID hit. So not only did our work disappear, our consulting work disappeared, our contract disappeared. So Michael and I sat on that for a weekend, and we decided we can do this, and we can do this right here in Cleveland. So we hired a Cleveland web developer, Kathy Smith at Lake Network. We hired a Cleveland artist, Scott Pickering, and we did hire an editor who is from Singapore, who's quite good. So, and a good friend of ours. So we put together a team and decided to move forward on our own.
We thought we had this all ready to roll, and the silver lining to the cloud of everything disappearing on the 24th and losing the big publisher who wanted to backburner this for 2 years and get back to it is that all creative control came back to us.
Yeah,
and larger companies can't pivot as fast as individuals can. And I think, I read an article yesterday in the Atlantic. It said COVID has put its big fat thumb on the fast forward button. And I think for people who want to work on their own and we've worked very hard on this, we can pivot a lot faster than these big publishing houses can.
And by
to give teachers what they need, which is support for remote instruction.
Right. So this will work remotely. This will work in the classroom too. But I like Sara was telling me about that article she read where it's like everything that is happening with the work week being pared down to you're never going to get on a plane to go watch a PowerPoint presentation across the country anymore because there's going to be all these things were happening anyways. And COVID has put the thumb on that fast forward, and it's just like it's compressed the time that it was going to take to get more remote education, to get more Zoom things going on. It just compressed that all in a shorter time frame.
Right. We saw this in the internet revolution as well. It took a lot longer because there wasn't a big crisis. You know, everyone kept having excuses for why we can't get online faster and faster. And we look back now, 20, 30 years later, and we wonder what took us so long. Now there's this crisis forcing these things that were already happening. Look, education needs to be revolutionized. It needs to be made accessible to more people. Healthcare needs to be made accessible to more people. It needs to be a right. Internet connection, broadband needs to be a human right. It really does. We see how just civil liberties and the justice system, these are problems that were festering, and we kept pushing them down the road. And it seems like now that we are locked down and forced to deal with these things, these are the silver linings. You guys have been at this, and I love the collaboration you do with, for example, with Scott Pickering on this book that you guys have already produced, Dreaming Big and Small, Poems for Kids. But talk about your collaboration with other artists, because this guy, he's a fabulous artist. We talked to him just a couple weeks ago about his own art and how he's pivoted. Sara, how did you guys get working with Scott, and what's that collaboration like? You know, finding his work and matching it with the kind of stuff you guys are doing.
Well, we don't work with him as you think of a normal author-illustrator relationship. What we have done is we look at him as an artist, and we are browsing his existing art, sometimes writing to that art, which is what we did a lot in Dreaming Big and Small. And then other times we are making curated choices from his art to go with pieces that we have. And we love his art because A, it's just delightful, and secondly, it's not race or gender specific. And that we want to invite kids into the resource, not say you don't belong here. And a good way to do that is through I guess, agnostic art.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And we look at it as art. We don't look at it as illustration. He's not illustrating our work. It's, you know, more often than he drew something that we requested, we wrote to what he had. And everywhere that we've ever used his stuff, we never name him as an illustrator. We always name him as an artist. It's always this is art, and I think that's important to introduce it to the kids. I
Yeah.
think, they like it. It's that was one thing that the big publisher was a little leery about. Like, this is kind of edgy stuff here, and I said,
Well,
did
It
you
it's,
doesn't
know
all
that?
look the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it sounds like you guys have focused more on your own art, the control, the ability to control and work with people you want to work with and do the kind of work you really want to do without having the corporate over your shoulder. That's a really important thing.
But
There
we
are
assume
challenges,
all the
though.
risk.
There's obviously more risk, and then more risk means more reward. You have the reward in doing it, and you also may have more financial reward because they're not taking all the money off the top, theoretically. There's also the challenge during COVID, and really any time for writers, and you guys address this in your work, of how to find inspiration. And you guys wrote a book called From Striving to Thriving Writers, Strategies to Jumpstart Writing. And I'm wondering, Sara, how do you guys, what specific techniques do you use to stimulate your own mind? Because a lot of people are sitting around thinking, well, what do I write about? What do I think about? Where's my career going to go now? A lot of people have to rethink that, and they need some
Right,
inspiration.
right. So a lot of writing is what we call BIC, butt in chair, right? And you can't just wait for inspiration to strike you like a lightning bolt. So we are disciplined in terms of trying to spend regular amount of time writing. If I'm stuck for ideas, I go to the bookshelf behind me and I just start flipping through. And if I see a theme in there, maybe I write to that theme. And I think I counted one time on Amazon, like 7 or 8 books on writing from the inside out, starting with how you're feeling and then write. I don't feel like I write that way. I feel like I write from the outside in. So for me, inspiration is turning that camera out instead of toward me. And
Right.
of course, then I make a personal connection along the way, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Michael, you're also a very serious biker, and I know you get out most every day. I do as well. Is that a time for you, like it is for me, where ideas happen and sort of coalesce in this sort of semi-conscious state?
Sometimes it is. I also use that time for reading, because I've got, and you might want to look into these. They're called Trek aftershocks. They're headphones that go outside your ears, so you can still hear everything that's going on with you. So I will do. I'll listen to podcast. I'll do my professional reading, the stuff that I'm reading, like, because our stuff that we're doing now, I mean, we're really, really synced into the standards and cutting edge pedagogy and what's happening now in education. So that's a good time to learn that stuff. But if Sara is giving me an assignment, I need you to write a poem that uses the letter O and is about show, don't tell, I might unplug and go for the ride and think about that, and then come back and say, okay, that octopus owes me money, and then we'll
right. No, it makes sense. And I know, Sara, congratulations on winning the 2018 Jane Addams Peace Award for your book, The Enemy, Detroit, 1954. It's a young adult book, which, by the way, used to not get a lot of respect up until a little book called Harry Potter came along and just exploded the literary world. Is that something that creatively for you puts you in a different mindset? Does it stimulate you more? Is it more of a challenge? I know artists like a box because you put them in a box and they find their way out. It seems to inspire more. How's it work for you?
Well, it's a different writing process. Writing poetry is very short and intense. It's unusual if I sit for more than an hour writing a poem. When I was writing the novel, I was giving myself word goals for the day, 2,000 words a day. I did use chocolate treats to inspire myself. So if I got to the 2,000, I could have a piece of chocolate. You do what you do. But that's the way that book was written, and it just is a different writing process. And when Michael and I write for teachers, now it's not technical writing, but it is more formatted. We're writing textbooks. that is a different process. I don't give myself word limits. More, we're accomplishing a task, and we can stop after that task. So these are the genres require a different writing process.
Yeah, right now Sara and I are in offices across the hall from each other, and if we're working on a teacher book like Striving to Thriving, we'll take a pass at a chapter, and this is the way that we teach writing as well. So we would take a pass at a chapter, and that chapter might start out at 750, 800 words. So maybe I'll take the first pass, and then I email it to Sara in the office across the hall. She'll go through it, she'll flesh it out. It'll come back to me at about 1,500 words. Then I'll look at it again. It'll go back to her at 2,200 words. Now it's time to bring it back down to 1,800. And then and it goes back and forth. And that's the same process we use when we're teaching kids how to write. We start simple, get something on the page. You know, it's like I like to tell kids, the only type of writing that can't be improved is the writing that isn't on the page. So everything we write, we have the kids and anyone we're teaching, title your piece version 1. That's the first thing you do, and you get something down, then you go back and you work on it. You go back and you work on it. You go back and you work on it, and that's pretty much our process in a nutshell.
And believe it or not, that's kind of revolutionary in the education world, because a lot of writing programs give kids complex pieces of mentor text that they're supposed to break down and try to replicate. Well, for a striving student, that's just overwhelming. And so we like to start, as we do ourselves as writers, I'm sure as you do as a journalist, you start small and then you build on it.
Everything I write, I call it a draft. Right. Every time I write something, I put draft on it, and then I'll put a V1, V2, V3.
Start calling it version 1. Draft is a verb.
Okay, it's a version 1. But that works for us because we know that look, this is going to get changed and edited and amended multiple times from now. I don't honor myself with the thought that I'm going to come up with something perfect the first time out. I just get it out, and then I look at it and go,
that's freeing to a student.
Yeah.
If a student knows, and we talk about it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. And there's so many kids will just chew on their pencil before they put anything down because they're worried about it not being right. And I mean, adults do it too. But I mean, if we can break that habit early on, and if everyone was willing to admit that they're not going to get it right the first time, we'd have a lot better world if if people were willing to admit that they make mistakes. I think we'd be in a lot better shape right now. We wouldn't be in lockdown still.
Yeah, no, good point. Listen, these are great lessons for adults and for students. I want to thank you guys for taking time here today. I want to congratulate you for the good work that you've done as you've traveled the world, bringing honor to our region, bringing honor to the profession. You're true professionals. I love the way you've pivoted both your lives and your careers, as well as more recently here under coronavirus. It was almost like you were ready for this. It maybe you still don't see it in retrospect, but I can see that this was meant to happen, but it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Corona and the lockdown.
Yeah, and we have a good friend, Pam Munoz Ryan, who is a pretty well-known kids author, and she said, "Well, you guys got a flat tire, and you pulled off to the side of the road, you fixed your flat tire, and you kept moving." So we when the thing broke down, we were supposed to have a contract with a major publisher for this thing. Corona came, they put us on the back burner for 2 years, and we decided we're not going to wait 2 years.
Yeah, but it was less than a flat tire for you guys. It was really just a delay before you traded in that clunker for a Rolls Royce. Is how I see it.
Hopefully we can make the payments.
And hopefully. Hey.
Right now we're in a Honda minivan, but we're rolling, right?
You're still rolling down the road. That's the most important thing, okay?
Exactly.
That's all we ask. Thank you guys for staying in touch with us, being such an inspiration for us here in this profession and in the region. Be well, stay safe, and let's stay in touch, and best of luck with your new project.
ReadWriteSpeakIt.com.
We'll do that.
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much.
And thank you for the work
Thanks,
you
Tom.
do in
See you.
Cleveland.
Thank you. Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from Cool Cleveland. Be well, stay safe, and keep reading.